Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of Reaching Horizons with me, Abbas Hussain. Today, I've got a very special guest. He is the Member of Parliament for Nottingham North. He has done various events with us. He's been a guest on our Eid Festival. He's made many appearances on our radio channel in Nottingham as well, Radio Dawn. It's Alex Norris, Member of Parliament for North and Shadow Minister for Prevention, Public Health and Primary Care. Hi, Alex. How are you doing? Sure. I think Alex is having a bit of technical difficulties with his AirPods. I've not got mine in. I'm gonna stick to just these normal laptop. But yeah, Alex Norris. He's an MP for Nottingham North. This is my first interview with Alex Norris, a politician even. So I'm quite excited with. I'm quite.
I've lost you, Bas. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me, Alex?
I can't hear you at all. This is bad timing. We try again.
But yeah, Alex Norris is MP for Nottingham North and Minister for Shadow Minister, for Prevention, Public Health and Primary Care. We're going to get to know a bit about Alex's role, and later on in the show, we're going to speak about the vaccine, lockdown, and all sorts of stuff like that. So yeah, I think Alex is having a bit of technical difficulty, so we'll just let him rejoin the studio and we'll crack on then. But we've got a few questions from people. If you have any questions, leave them in the chat and I'll have a look at them. We're going to get to know about Alex's role as a Member of Parliament, what he does, what his day-to-day life consists of in Parliament, what promises he gave as part of his manifesto. Did he promise to work on education, youth crime, and stuff like that? So yeah, Alex is back. So take two. Let's see if this works.
Hi, Alex. I'm alive here. Sorry about that.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, loud and clear. I don't know what's going on.
Hallelujah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. I've been really looking forward to it, and a lot of people have been looking forward to hearing from you. So obviously we're living in strange times. We've never had these measures in place before, social distancing and stuff. For many people, it's very, very difficult, not seeing their family, not seeing their parents and stuff like that. But just a quick question, as an MP, how are you managing your role as an MP? Obviously, you've got to come to London quite a lot, attend the House of Commons. How are you working around this?
Yeah, well, I mean, like for me, it's very different. If I think back, the election was only 13 months ago, and you're standing in an election. You've got an idea of what you want to do in Parliament, what you want to do for the community, and then something like COVID happens and changes it beyond all recognition. And if we kind of rewound back to that time, to see now, the House of Commons, which people may have seen with only 50 as opposed to hundreds of people in there at a distance wearing masks, I don't think you really would have been able to tell people what was going off there. But, like everybody, I adapt. And, I hope those who are listening are as well as they can be and their families. Cause I know it's been a tough time. I think the best thing I'd also say about is that no one's got a crystal ball, but I think we're nearer to the end than the beginning. I think we're much nearer to the end than the beginning. So, we will get there, even if sometimes you think, goodness me, I can't believe this is still going.
Yeah, I mean, it has been difficult for university students as well. I'm here for university and haven't been really going back to see family much because of the measures in place. And, I respect the measures and, I've got to play my part in order to get us back doing our day-to-day, getting back to our normal lives again. So, yeah, we can only wish for the best and, hopefully maybe like in a month or two, whenever Mr. Johnson has it, pulls his pants together, we can maybe move forward. But yeah, it's been a funny, just looking at the government going back and forth. It's frustrating as well as a university. I don't think enough support was given to university students. even though, you know, university students, they should be a priority. They are the future generation. Future leaders are going to be made from this generation and stuff. So yeah, maybe if someone's listening who works with him, you know, they can give him a budge on the shoulder. But yeah, you know, as I said, it's great to have you on the show. And so a bit about your role in terms of a shadow minister. So everyone who's not au fait, I will use that term, with ministers and shadow ministers, could you just explain that? Because I know a minister, he has a role in government. Yep. And a shadow minister is, if the Labour Party was in government, you'd hold that ministerial responsibility. So if you just want to...
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good place to start. I mean, the way to think of it is, you know, we've just seen an American election. Americans elect a president who has all those powers invested in that individual, and you know they act almost, you know, as a sole leader and then have to liaise with Congress or whatever. In Britain, we don't have that. We have parties elected to lead by getting the most MPs. So obviously, at the last election, the Tories got a majority of MPs, so they get to form the government. They pick a leader, but that leader doesn't have presidential powers. So instead, he has a cabinet of 25, 30 people. So one will be doing foreign affairs, another home affairs, someone will be doing schools, someone will be doing health, transport, all those wide ranges of British life. So that's their cabinet. And then beneath the cabinet, each will have 3 or 4 ministers that look at a different aspect. So for transport, say, there'll be someone who's looking at buses and roads, there's someone who's looking at aviation, someone else who'll be looking at the green matters, someone else will be looking at railways. So in the end, you've got about 150, something like that, ministers. And then we, as the Labour Party, we've got the second most seats in the election. So we form the opposition, as it's called, Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition, which is our formal title, to hold the government to account and to lead that process of scrutinising their work. So we act as a shadow government. So they have a prime minister, we have a leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer. They have a home secretary, Priti Patel. We have a shadow home secretary, Nick Thomas-Symonds, all the way down to, and in my case, I'm the shadow public health minister. So one of the junior ministers below the shadow health secretary, which is a fellow from Leicester called Jonathan Ashworth. So I shadow a minister called Jo Churchill. She's an MP in Suffolk. And I look at the work that she does across primary care, so GPs, dentistry, pharmacy, ophthalmology, and public health. So all those sort of things like smoking cessation, alcohol, all those sorts of challenges to health in Britain. And I scrutinise her work, and we debate matters in the House, and we don't always agree. And I might say, well, if I was doing your job, this is what I would do, and she'd say, well, you're not doing the job, this is what I'm going to do, and that's kind of politics. So that's how it works, really. It's being a shadow minister is great. It's a privilege, certainly, to be involved in the process of health at a time like this with the global health pandemic. However, I'd much rather not have the shadow title. It's actually to look at the work of someone else and say, oh, you should do this, you should do that. I'd rather be the person being criticised, if I'm honest. That's just my personality.
Well, let's hope the next election does win. I think we've got a great chance of winning now that the Conservatives have.
People will have a good chance.
But I've got a question here saying, could you nudge lady on the shoulder and ask her why the GP waiting times are so long? That's one of the issues that she probably needs to address. But yeah, that's fantastic to hear. I mean, that's knowledge for me as well, and everyone who's listening.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
So we'll move on to our first question that I have is, why did you want to become an MP? And there's a lot of people out there who have a firm interest in politics, but they don't know how to integrate into the system. So
it started, I didn't start as a teenager and think, right, well, I want to be an MP, or I want to be a minister, I want to be the Home Secretary or the Prime Minister. I mean, there are some people who, when they're 15, 16, 17, 18, that's how they are. That wasn't me. I knew I was interested in kind of politics and current affairs and the world around me. I knew that much. And then I got to university, and I was born in Manchester, came to Nottingham for university, and I thought, well, I need to get involved in things beyond just my studies. I studied politics. I enjoyed my politics, but I wasn't a great academic student. I was never going to go on to do master's, PhD, or anything like that. It just wasn't for me. So I thought I need to do other practical things, if nothing else, to prepare me for perhaps the world of work afterwards. And so I got involved in sort of political campaigning. I joined the Labour Party. And then for me, the big moment was there was a campaign that I got involved in and had a leadership role in what year, time's traveling too quickly, but about 2005, so probably my second year at university. And they were shutting Basford Hall College. That was the plan, to shut Basford Hall College. Now, Basford, Bulwell, Bilborough, my community where I live now, where I represent, is one of the sort of most challenged educationally. And I didn't think that was a good idea, and other people didn't. We campaigned, and we had banners, and we did petitions, and we went and see people, we lobbied, and we demonstrated, and whatever. And we got the college saved, and then we've campaigned since, and we've had it rebuilt, and so that I started there. And I thought, wow, okay, so you do that. What else can you do? Then I got involved in a few more campaigns, and then eventually I thought that this is important. I think campaigning is massively important. It's still a big part of my life, but I don't want to spend my life always saying this person over there, I think you should do this, and now I have to try. Yeah. Eventually, I made the decision. Okay, I'm going to try and be that guy who makes the decisions, and that's going to make me unpopular. But I would rather be on that side of the fence. So I stood for council, got elected to the council in 2011, and then had leadership roles across community safety, and then adult social care and health. And I loved that. And I'll be honest, because I can say this now because no one will be upset with me. My plan, I wanted to be leader of the council. That was my goal. That was my ambition. And then this moment happened, and my predecessor, as Member of Parliament, a guy called Graham Allen, for the north and west of the city, he decided to step down. He wasn't well. The election was called we weren't expecting, 2017. And, the opportunity was there, and I thought, I'll go for it. And I was selected as the candidate, and then managed to win the seat and hold it in 2019. So that's how it happened. I don't think you can always plan these ways. It starts, by getting involved. And I say this whenever I talk to people who are interested, who, as you say, look at it and say, well, where do I fit into this? It starts, and everybody's interested in something. So if it's just issues, if you're only interested about climate change, there are brilliant campaigns in Nottingham that you can get involved in. Climate Action Nottingham, Extinction Rebellion, any of that stuff, that's there for you. Or there's immigration campaigns, more important than ever. Get involved with the Refugee Forum, help people very directly who need us. Or you can be interested in broader things. So then maybe, I would obviously say the Labour Party, so that was the party for me. But to get involved in a political party, pick your party, be active, campaign, and then the opportunities hopefully kind of come from that. So that's my story, really, and that's how I ended up here. There are times you still kind of think, how did this all happen? But it's a real privilege, and it's my community. I'm not sent from the moon to be here. I wasn't parachuted into here. It's where I lived. It's where I do live. I love it. It frustrates me at times, and I want to make it a better place. And there's days you think you're doing that. There's days you don't think you're doing that, and you just kind of do your best.
I think, if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, Nottingham's been a Labour stronghold for quite amount of time in terms of council and the MPs as well. So obviously it's split into Nottingham North, which is you, Nottingham East, which is Lillian Greenwood.
That's Nadia Whittome.
Nadia Whittome, and Nottingham South, which is Lillian Greenwood.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so those are the three positions, the three MPs that represent Nottingham as a whole. Yeah. So yours, Nottingham North, do you know roughly how many constituents you're representing?
Yes, it's about 65,000 adults. So then when you put kids in, about 85,000. And it's basically everything in the north and the west of the city. So from Bilborough through Aspley, Strelley, Bulwell, Basford, up to the Ring Road, and then Bestwood, and stops about there. So from the Ring Road outwards, generally the outer estates, traditionally white working class. Actually, that's changed quite a lot now. Quite a bit of African migration, a lot of South Asian migration from other parts of the city. So yeah, that's my bit really.
How much casework do you get a week? And sometimes is it difficult to keep on top of? Do you have a team in place to help you and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the casework's really fundamental, and every item that comes through, that is a person's life. And, you know, you can go down to Parliament and think, you know, the most important thing to me is what's going on in foreign affairs and what does the Donald Trump situation mean for democracy in the world. That's fine. But when someone comes to you and says, I'm getting evicted from my house and my landlord's mistreating me, that has to be your priority, helping that person in that moment. So I'm looking to be supportive. I have a staff notionally split across Nottingham and Westminster. Obviously, no one's in Westminster other than the MPs at the moment. And the Nottingham staff work from home rather than from the office at the moment because of COVID. Mm-hmm. I have this casework support, basically 2.5 full-time equivalent posts. That's the sort of volume we're talking about. And it ranges from very direct, very hard situations, or domestic abuse situations, things that are moving, you know, within the hour. You got to getting on with this, to things that can be longer term. I get a lot of, you know, you may have done them yourselves, or people listening, watching may have done themselves. Basically, letter writing campaigns. So you can go to a website that tallies with your interests, and it'll say, put your email address, and we'll send an email to your member of parliament saying you're really interested in hedgehogs, which is what I got the other day. Normally you can tell when they've launched them because you get about 10 within about 5 minutes of each other. They're important because someone's taken the time to get in touch and say, I care about this. What are you going to do about it? But it's not quite as immediate as the person who's saying, I'm getting evicted from my house, help me find emergency housing. So there's a bit of kind of triage and balance in that. The hardest thing for me in there, I mean, it is the volume. You know, I represent, you know, one of the poorest constituencies in the country. We have challenges around welfare, around housing, around migration. You know, those are really significant challenges in people's lives. You know, throughout COVID, one of the biggest things we've been doing is just making sure people got enough food. That's really hard. You know, that fundamental thing to be doing. So it is a lot, and that's before you think about any of your kind of, you know, your shadow duties as a shadow minister or any of your other issues you want to raise in Parliament. You've got to do your day job because that's what you're there for. But I also really enjoy that because, you know, I dare say we'll talk about kind of campaigning issues, but I've got a few issues that I work on that I really care about, and progress on that, certainly because we're in opposition, not in government. Mm-hmm. Progress really slow, like pushing a 50p up a hill with your nose, trying to change things. Whereas these casework things, they're immediate things. You can make a difference to someone's life, and that's a great, you know, that keeps me going, frankly. So it's that kind of balance, but that's always got to be the priority because those are people's lives, and you know, nothing more important than that.
I think in terms of you mentioning like people not having enough food as well, I think free school meals has been a really, really huge issue during this lockdown, and the Conservative government have completely turned a blind eye. Even when Marcus Rashford started his campaign and still is campaigning, just 322 MPs voting against giving, you know, small children food. It's like just bizarre. How can you like sleep at night and knowing that, you know, a child is going hungry in the country? Some like you were elected to represent your constituents, people. You were their voice. You were supposed to, you know, alleviate their troubles they are having if they don't have enough food, putting measures in place to ensure that they have enough food to eat. So, you know, I think I was reading the other day, the person who was given the contract for free school meals, he earns 4.7 million a year, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, something about the Conservatives that has always made me uneasy, that everyone they give their contract to, he's either filling his own pockets, filling his and the Conservative pockets, and he's not doing anything at all. So I think, you know, people who voted Tory, they need to, you know, maybe wake up from the dream they're living in, and, you know, put their head out the window and look at the country, the state of the country. You know, one of the world's most leading, we are the world's most leading economy, one of anyway, you know, there's China, USA and stuff like that. But when you look at what's happening and how the Tories are controlling this situation, it's just, you know, it's unbelievable, like how. So it's just, you know, the Conservatives, they've really made a mess of the country, and hopefully anyone who's listening out there who voted Tory, maybe, you know, after listening to this interview, your allegiance will change, and if it doesn't, then run into a wall or something. Like
we just, you know, we've got to persuade, and you know, we know at the end of the day we didn't win the election, and And what we can't do is kind of blame the voters and say, well, that makes you terrible people, because they're not going to change their minds. We have to say this is the reality, and we have to be clear about what's going on, and then clear in our policies in a way that makes sure they believe that we can do it, and we have to persuade them. We've got a couple of years to do that, and that's one of our sort of primary jobs. So hopefully, that's why I say yes to everything. Every opportunity is a chance to talk to people who do support Labour, and hopefully fire them up and get their views, but also a chance to listen to people who don't, and then hopefully maybe to persuade and have that conversation. So that's what we're doing, and hopefully in time you can have enough of them and you can win.
Yeah, hopefully. I think austerity has been a main part of the Conservative government's manifesto for a numerous amount of elections, and and we've seen Labour's work in terms of free school meals and so on and so forth. But we'll leave that to aside before I get too passionate about it.
Yeah.
We have another question here. What have you done since being elected? So, in terms of, obviously, it doesn't have to be specific casework, because that might be a privilege between you and your constituents, just generally.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of going to put that to one side, having talked about that, and take it as read that day to day, we're helping a steady drumbeat of dozens and dozens and dozens of people. And then when you add them up over a year, you're talking obviously multiple thousands. So that's kind of a given. Frankly, all MPs should be doing that well. And if you're not doing that, then you're really not going to be doing a great job. So I'm going to start with a little bit of defence and say that, so I was elected for the first time in June 2017. Pretty much the entire time between June 2017 and the election in December 2019 was ruined with Brexit. Then the month after we finished off Brexit, pretty much. And then there was about a month where there was, we were back to kind of a more normal time, and then COVID hit us. So my 3.5 years has just been Brexit and COVID. So that has been a limiting factor on the things you do. So my way of delivering locally, I chair a charity called the Rebalancing Foundation, and it's something I stole from my predecessor. It's not my original idea. But it's something virtually no other MP does, and I think it's a really good way of doing things, because it's saying that I'm a backbench MP, so I have no power. I have much less power than I had when I was on the council. So I have to find ways to get things done. So I have a charity where, because I'm the MP, people look to me for local leadership and get involved, hopefully. So I've got Nottingham City Homes, people from the voluntary sector, such as Bulwell Toy Library, the Coppers, the council, all come together through this organisation. So the things I do through that, I put a job fair on every year. Obviously, COVID's kind of ruined that at the moment, but we've had a couple of goes at that. I think 700 people found work through those, which was really good direct things. Similarly, we found a partner from the world of dentistry who helps us with supervised toothbrushing, because we've got some of the worst oral health amongst our children in the country. So again, very direct sort of things. We've set up dog walking groups, not perhaps the things you think when you stand for Parliament you're going to end up doing, but those very local things, micro things another good one, we managed to partner with the Roy Castle Foundation who deal with lung cancer to do lung health scans, and we found a number of cancers in our community and numbers of cases of COPD, and those people are getting help now. So very direct micro actions that hopefully help things on our estates. And then in Parliament itself, I've kind of campaigned around three main issues, because you could do everything, Hong Kong protesters to microplastics in the sea and everything in the middle. And if you try to do everything, then you do nothing. So I've kind of focused down on three issues that I think are really important to my community and important in the world. So domestic abuse, modern slavery, and violence and abuse against shop workers. So on domestic abuse, we've managed to get the government to bring forward a bill. We're on that process at the moment. Me and another dozen plus campaigners have managed to get a series of things in there that we think are going to help the world. Still hoping to get paid leave for domestic abuse there. Modern slavery, secured from and these things can sound esoteric, but you hope that they make a difference in the long run. Getting the government to, at the moment, big companies are required to publish a statement to say how they know they don't have slavery in their supply chains every year, and only half do. What other law is there that only half can can only half people have to abide by it. So getting that extended and enforced, that's been one of the kind of satisfactory ones. And then my major thing at the moment on violence against shop workers, I want to make it an aggravated offence in sentencing. So judge or magistrate can give a stronger sentence if you attack a shop worker during their duties. And people have said to me, "Oh, why shop workers? Why not park workers? Why not X, Y, Z?" And the reason for that is that shop workers are working in the public interest on things like not selling alcohol to children, not selling cigarettes to children, lottery, knives, acid, whatever it is, drunk people, to angry people, to children, as I say. So at that moment, they've got a badge on, could be Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Co-op, Morrow's, whoever, but actually they're public servants doing that, and Parliament asked them to do it. So we should have their back. So I haven't won on that campaign yet, but we're getting closer every day. So that's a kind of range of the very local to the very national and everything in between. And as I say, it's hard in opposition because we don't have any levers to pull. So we have to persuade Tories, but that's a skill in itself. And there are days, I will confess, that you finish, you get home, you think, are we making any progress? And there's other days you make great progress. And it's really exhilarating. So yeah, it's a real thrill to do, and I hope I'm making progress.
Yeah, well, we are sure you are. Well, I'm personally sure you are. Even though I'm not, obviously Lilian is my local MP, but I've seen, the work of yourself and Nadia being the youngest MP, and she's a great voice for her constituents. And if if the MPs for Nottingham weren't doing any work, they wouldn't be getting re-elected again and again. So, that speaks for itself.
We know about it as well. We've got active communities, which is great, and that's what you want, because people soon tell you if you're getting it right, you're getting it wrong.
So moving on to the next question is, what does a normal day as an MP look like? Now, you can speak about before COVID and then during COVID.
Yeah, so sort of before, it might be a bit easier to talk about it in terms of a normal week, because obviously you've got this, one of the things that makes the role unique is that you've got this split difference between representing, a community, a constituency. I'm here at the moment, beaming in from Bulwell, and then having to work in Parliament in the week, most weeks. So I go down, would normally get the train on a Monday morning, wouldn't go too early, probably get about the 9:30 train. Then ideally, if you're making, if you're kind of on track, then I have a flat in London where you stay during the week, maybe dump my stuff, change, and then go into Parliament. The parliamentary day starts at 2:30 on a Monday. So you've normally got an hour or so before then to meet with people, and you have meetings with all sorts of people, whether that's groups that have an interest in Nottingham, but maybe at a national level, so say the National Lottery, those sort of groups, or lots and lots of organisations relating to health, which is obviously, as I said, what I do a lot of my sort of parliamentary work in. So it could be people about kidneys, people about lungs, all sorts. And then at 2:30, the parliamentary day starts, and then you get an hour for questions. So every day, so whether that's the Home Secretary or the Transport Secretary, the Health Secretary, one of the ministers every day, that first hour will take an hour's worth of questions. So that's a good time to get some of your constituency issues in. Mm-hmm. Then at 3:30, whatever the main business for the day is, so that can either be emergency statements from the government or things called urgent questions, when we want to hear from the government on something that couldn't have been planned. So something breaks out, and someone, you put in an urgent question saying, I want to talk about this. So that normally takes the next couple of hours. And then the remainder of the day will be on whatever legislation the government wants to put on. So, whatever bills or general debates on things. And on a Monday, that'll run till 10. Now, on that, any of those things, you might not have been drawn out for a question. You might not have a particular interest in the statement or urgent question. You might not have an interest in the bill. It could be, financials. There's all sorts of financial bills all the time that it's quite hard to find something to be excited about in. So again, that time you can use for various things. Again, lots of meetings with stakeholders around health issues or local issues. Then on a Monday at 6 o'clock, all the Labour MPs and Lords get together and have a meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party, as we call it. That can be a bit... That's not always great fun. You can tell whether you'll win it. It's for want of a better way of expressing it, it's like a dressing room for your cricket team, your football team, and it's great when you're winning, and it's terrible when you're losing.
That sounds a bit like a Royal Rumble.
Yeah, it can really be like that. So then, kind of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are pretty similar, but with different hours. So Tuesday will start 11:30 and we'll go through to 7. Same on Wednesday, and then Thursday 9:30 till 5 o'clock. And then trying to get away on Thursday at some point. If if the Thursday afternoon stuff isn't of interest to you, you can perhaps get on the train, go back sooner, and then local meetings Thursday night normally, and then Friday's the big day because that's the constituency day. So be in the office. I've got an office in Central Bulwell, so that'll be constituency surgery with people with individual challenges, going and seeing community projects, maybe meeting with police or Nottingham City Homes on local issues, school visits. I do loads of school visits. I love doing those. And you're packing in as much as possible on a Friday. And then generally Saturday morning, probably something similar again. And then at some point, some political campaigning, normally on a Saturday morning or an early afternoon Saturday. And then in an ideal world, if you can finish your week at 3 o'clock on a Saturday in time for the football, that's generally a pretty good week. And then ideally family time Saturday night on Sunday, and then back again on Monday. That doesn't always happen. Church is a good place to find people, so that's Sunday morning. Faith establishments in general, but obviously churches meet on Sunday mornings generally. So that's kind of standard week. The thing that COVID's changed really is two things. One, I drive rather than get the train. So it's quite quick. It's not what I'd want for my environmental footprints. You can't do it forever, but it's quite quick. And then everything's done into the laptop. So again, you can pack a lot into your day because the good thing about it, if there is any good thing, and there really isn't much, but I can do Nottingham things in London now. Yeah. Because people, I can do surgeries because it's not as good. I'd rather see someone, face to face, because often the problem they come with is not the problem that they tell you they're coming with. And then it's only when you see people in their body language, you kind of understand that actually there's something else they need help with. Yeah. So that's kind of it really. It's every day's a little bit different. It's great in that sense. You're never bored. It goes like that. You get down on a Monday morning, you think, here's the week, and then before you know it, you're coming back on a Thursday. And similarly, you're throwing yourself into it when you get back home on a Thursday, and it's soon time to go back to London again. So time moves pretty quickly.
It does sound very tiring, but I guess when you help people and you love doing what you do, it's a fantastic thing to do,
Yeah, you're never bored, which is the most important thing. You get tired, everybody gets tired, but it's the adrenaline gets going, and the stuff's so important and interesting that it keeps you going, really.
Yeah. So that's fantastic to hear. I mean, I didn't really know. I thought, MPs mainly based in Westminster, all of them get together, and they have representatives in Nottingham to work on their casework and stuff, and they work on it virtually from Westminster. That's what I was.
There's quite a bit of that, and I would always say that the people doing the skilled casework work are my staff. They're in it every day. They are specialists in it. So but people want to talk to their MP too, because there'll be some MPs who just say, "Well, don't bother talking to me. The staff will be doing it anyway, so tell them." I don't think that quite works, and I think there'll be times. I think if someone from my team was on that says that perhaps I get involved in ways that aren't helpful because they know what they're doing, and I start saying, "Oh, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that?" But
yeah, that's fantastic to hear. It's quite busy and it sounds very tiring, but as I said, it probably pays off when you see smiles on your constituents' faces. Yeah, happy. This is what we voted for. But yeah, we know that. I personally know that every MP that gets put forth for an election, whether that be Labour, Conservative, he has his own manifesto on issues that he or she will work on within his constituency or her constituency. So the next question is, what promises were part of your manifesto?
So the sort of things my manifesto were pretty similar both times because there wasn't a lot of time between the elections, and it's slightly different. You stand for council and you think you got a good chance of being in charge of the council. You can commit to more concrete things. Parliamentary elections, it's hard to know whether you're going to be in government or not. on. So what I committed to really were the sort of areas I wanted to work on. First was a pledge to be local, present, have a local presence in Bulwell, be accessible. So kind of stuff you'd expect to do, but people want to hear. And then focus around work and jobs. So that's where the kind of jobs fair things come in. My charity would just won a bid off the postcode lottery for £10,000 to put people back into work. So that sort of thing. Then a pledge around our schooling, because we certainly up until the last year or two, we've had significant cuts to school budgets, which, whatever you think about politics, that's a bad. Investing in your children saves you money in the long run anyway. So kind of a pledge around school funding. We're doing better there, I have to say. We're winning that conversation. Then something around older people and support, whether it's social care through a health service. I mean, COVID's kind of blown that up a bit, but actually, as a country, we're still not getting there. So we're a long way away from that. And then commitment around trying to scratch your head on the last one. We talk about environment, because that was supposed to be the great issue for this Parliament, was climate change. Britain's going to be the leader of COP when it comes round. It's been cancelled because of COVID. So again, try and put a bit of a focus on that. And I haven't done as well on that because, as I say, it's been blown up by COVID. So, I'm reasonably happy with the kind of progress to report back to people after a year. I think people are quite understanding that it's been a difficult year.
Yeah.
So those are the sorts of things you talk about, and then obviously, you go back to people and say, this is what I said I'd do, this is what I've done, and you hope people will assess it fairly, and then they make that judgment about whether to send you down again, and you never take that for granted.
Like in terms of promises in a manifesto, was yours different? So when you ran for council, did you have a manifesto there as well, or?
We had kind of local pledges, and then and similarly, what I had on my local materials, because there's materials that come about the Labour Party nationally, and what we want to do for the country, and then we'll have kind of support that with local pledges too, because I think people want that balance. And then everything you kind of pledge locally has got to fit in with what you're doing nationally. There's no point saying you're going to make a focus on school education and funding for schools if your national manifesto says you're going to reduce it. Now, obviously, you probably wouldn't say that, but those things have to be complementary, I think.
Yeah. So we'll move on to our next question. It's kind of a repeat. What issues have you worked on since being elected? We've been through that pretty much. So whoever asked that, you can just watch the show again. So now we move on to the questions about the COVID vaccine. And obviously that's a hot topic in my community personally, because what we have in the Pakistani, Indian and Bangladeshi community is a lot of conspiracy theories. Yeah. And I'm sure in other cultures as well, but personally, I think not to the extent where people are frightened to get an injection. I mean, I've had injections in school, I think measles and 2 or 3 other injections as well during my secondary and primary school. So the first question is obviously, well, we'll start off with the vaccine itself first. The vaccines come out, we've got the Pfizer vaccine, and there's obviously another AstraZeneca or something.
That's AstraZeneca, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got those 2 vaccines, and the government has been able to get, I think, a couple of million doses of that vaccine, and obviously the elderly are going to be prioritized. So who else is going to be prioritized? And so we've got the elderly, and then we've got our key health workers. So if you just want to talk about who's next in line for the vaccine, and approximate time period.
Yeah, so at the moment there's 9 categories that goes from the very top, which is residents in care homes and staff who work in care homes, to over 50s. So at the moment, you and me don't quite pop up in a category yet. Yeah. But the priority, basically, if you vaccinate all 9 of those categories, you eliminate 99% of people who would have died from COVID. Because actually, if you and I getting COVID would be a bad thing, but the likelihood of us dying, unless we've got an underlying condition like, say, diabetes, is actually relatively low. But if it's in the older categories, it's much higher. So the top 4, which is that one, the care homes and the staff, frontline NHS, the clinically extremely vulnerable. So that's people who are shielding because, let's say, they've had problems with an organ before, maybe lost parts of their liver, not got a kidney, or got long-term conditions, and that takes you down to basically the over 70s. Those 4 categories. And again, if you vaccinate all those people, that reduces about 80% of your risk of death. So a really big chunk in a relatively, that's about 13 million people. So less than a quarter of the country gets you more than 80% of saving lives. So well worth your time. The top strand, the care homes bit's supposed to be done by the end of this month, and all 4 of those top 4 is going to be done by the middle of February, so about a month from now. We'll see if the government can hit those targets, but we very much hope so. And then the rest will come a little bit after that. I know that the WhatsApps are fizzing at the moment. We hear about it. You hear some of the stories. The only thing I'd say is, if people have a doubt about it, ask. Whether that's asking your GP when you call for it, whether that's asking your local councillor, your local MP, whoever it is. Leaders in your faith community, good people to talk to about this. Ask your question. Like, some of the conspiracy theories are a bit ridiculous. However, people being hesitant about getting vaccinations, putting that into the body, that's not an unfair thing to be. I'm very confident that whatever the question is, there's a good answer to it. But ask it, and we will do that. And we will, I want to persuade people. That's why, that's why you don't put it in law saying everybody has to have it. You've got to persuade people. And we need people to take it up. And, we know particularly, and this is the thing that kind of concerns me, who's been dying of COVID. It's been people with disabilities, and older people, and people from Black and Asian communities in Britain. And certainly in the latter, those are people who are now vaccine hesitant. So there's a lot of risk there. So I want to be able to persuade, inform, and support people to make that decision. Not to say just do it and shut up. I don't believe in that. Every question's a valid one. Ask it, and we'll deal with it.
So we've got a comment here via Facebook by Mahfouz from Birmingham. Is a conspiracy question circulating is whether the vaccine will alter people's DNA. It is absurd, I know, but if you can clarify, I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, that again, it's not. That's not how this vaccine works. Altering DNA is very, very difficult to do anyway, outside of kind of the embryos or whatever. So that's definitely not the purpose of this vaccine. It's not what it's been tested to do. It's gone through all the testing stages. So that's certainly not an issue with this one.
I mean, neither of us are medical professionals, but if we take into perspective this question, we can see that we've had many vaccines prior to this, and
polio,
well, to protect us, those vaccines have, whether that's the swine flu jab, the flu jab, the measles injections, anything like that, they've proved to be effective. There might be the odd, reaction to the vaccine, but that's normal. Just as you have an allergic reaction to anything else.
You could have an allergic reaction to paracetamol.
Yeah.
And so that's why there has to be proper medical oversight. But yeah, I mean, and in that spirit, because we've all had vaccines, that's why in Britain healthcare outcomes get better and better. And if you mentioned earlier that a lot of your listeners will be from the Muslim community or Hindu community. Well, I know that those communities are very active and very involved and very passionate about international aid and support for the developing South. But when we give support to the developing South, what is it? It's education, running water help, food, and it's vaccinations. Lots and lots of vaccinations. So we're in this business already. This is not a new thing. So we do it every day. We do it to our children and very safely. And so I don't think it's something we should worry about. And it's gone through all its proper phases. But those are legitimate questions to be asking.
So we'll move on to our next question. It's regarding the vaccine again. I mean, there we've got a comment from a brother saying, way too much fake news going around WhatsApp, and that is pretty true. The amount of videos and little pictures that I receive saying, don't take the vaccine, beware of the vaccine, with like devil's horns on Boris sometimes, or Miss Patel or something like that. It's very concerning. But yeah, as we said, the vaccine is completely safe. It's been through all of the test stages, and as we spoke about allergic reactions as well, it's normal to have the odd allergy to something. It's not something to worry about. But the next question we have is, how does anyone know the long-term benefits of the vaccine? I mean, we've kind of spoken about this very briefly, because it's been through the trial stage, and we know that because it's been through that, there's more benefits than reactions. If there was more reactions than benefits, then the vaccine wouldn't have been given into the public eye.
And there'll have been lots of process points in that process of testing and developing where stuff got thrown in the bin because it didn't work. The one thing we do know is that better than 90% of the time these vaccines give you immunity to COVID, and that's what the name of the game is. Now we can't say what therefore is going to happen 10 years down the line, but there's no reason to think anything's going to happen 10 years down the line. This vaccine, like other vaccines, is doing a very specific job. It's going into the body, targeted to develop a certain reaction over a certain time period. And we know that for this vaccine, it develops an immunity to COVID in about 3 weeks. So, that's what's there to be concerned about, really. So, that it's been fully tested, and that's the right thing to do, which is why it's taken time. People ask me, well, how's it come through so quickly? Well, actually, one of the major reasons it's come through so quickly is that normally when they're developing a vaccine or for any issue, you do funding bids, you're trying to get money to push it to another stage. For this, we've thrown a kitchen sink at it. We've said, look, we're doing this come what may. If we can get it safely done, then this is what we're doing. So they haven't had to worry about writing bids. They just got on with it. They haven't had to worry about finding people for tests, because this has been the priority. And people, they put it out there saying, do you want to be a test? And people flock to it because they want this to be over. So, it's quick because it's had a really, really, streamlined process, but not because we've dropped any of the safety elements. We've dropped all the other bits that aren't to do with safety. And so I hope that can give people confidence. But again, ask, whether that's today, whether that's asking someone in, a mosque, a temple, a church, or in school where you work, wherever. Ask people, doesn't it? There will be some people who kind of roll their eyes about it. It is right, it's your safety, it is your life, it is right to want to inform yourselves of the risks and the benefits. I think the outcome is very, very clear when you look at that. But ask, and I think that's absolutely right thing to do.
I mean, another point to mention there as well is that if we compare it to the swine flu was something that was affecting mainly England, and that's why the vaccine took a longer time than the coronavirus vaccine. In terms of the coronavirus vaccine, that is affecting the world, and when the world comes together, we can do marvelous things. So that's just a point that I wanted to mention. The next question is, has the vaccine got human or animal DNA? Which is
yeah, and I get that's a very important one. Again, it's halal, it's kosher, but this is another one that, if you're discomforted by, talk to leaders in your faith community, talk to imams, talk to friends at mosques, to be really sure that that this is compatible with your belief system. It is, I'm very confident in that. We've had all the checks there, but if you need to inform yourself and give yourself confidence, that I think that's really important, because I know that brothers and sisters listening, people in general, put a lot of thought into what goes into their body and how that aligns with the way in which they lead their lives, and that is it's a very sacred and personal decision to make. Mm-hmm. So take your time to be sure on that. But this is absolutely compatible with any of those beliefs, whether you're a Jew, a Muslim, a Christian, or none of the above, frankly.
Yeah, I think the Muslim Council of Britain have done a lot of interviews and talk shows on this particular topic, that the vaccine is halal. It's not contradictory to any specific religion. So yeah, and also the British Fatwa Council, which is the Muslim legal ruling, in terms of not legal ruling as in the decisions aren't binding, for example, legally, but in terms of Islamic Sharia, it is it's a board which gives legal rulings, Islamic rulings, based on the contemporary topics. And in terms of the coronavirus vaccine, they've deemed it safe and completely halal to use. So in terms of Muslims out there and Pakistanis who are worried about the coronavirus vaccine being not safe to use or contradictory to Islamic beliefs, it is not. The British Fatwa Council has given a ruling. And likewise, I think the other communities, Muslim community, the Jewish community, the Christian community, have all deemed it safe, the Hindu community as well, and the Sikh community. So the last question before we part is, do you think the COVID situation is biowarfare? This was quite amusing when I got this.
No, I get it. And, you know, I always think, and we've had a little bit of dose of this in Britain recently, there can be a tendency to say, you know, something so bad happens. First, you want to find blame and you say, okay, well, we understand that this started in Wuhan. So either, you know, the actions that were taken there, and I don't know the wet markets in Wuhan, I'll be honest about that. Doesn't sound like it's great standards. It's not like Bulwell Market, that's for sure. It wouldn't get past the council inspectors. But then they want to put the finger of blame, and I don't think that's helpful. And then after that, you say, well, okay, maybe if it's not negligence on their part, maybe they did it on purpose. Frankly, there's 25 ways they could do, you know, easier and worse things, or why now? You know, I don't think there's any credible evidence to suggest that's the truth. Sometimes these things happen, and we, you know, this has been a reminder that we are very interdependent on each other, and we live alongside each other. And when things are airborne, then boy, can they transmit. So yeah, I don't think there's any evidence for that. I just think it happens, and we've had to respond to it, and you know, that's good. We know that pandemics are a risk because of the way we live our lives. So we need to be a bit better prepared, perhaps, for the next one. I think for me, the frustration was we could see things happening. Okay, maybe you look at China and say, what's happening in China? That's a long way from home. Once it was happening in Italy, I think we maybe should have said, okay, maybe the Roma team shouldn't be coming over to Liverpool. Maybe we should. They're going into a lockdown. We're 3 weeks behind them. Maybe we should. 3 weeks, we should just do it ourselves. And those are lots of lessons there. But I don't think this isn't a war situation. This is a, you know, these things happen situation.
I think in terms of, you know, lockdown and stuff like that, there were a lot of U-turns made by the government. There wasn't any action immediately, unlike other countries such as New Zealand, who are part of the Commonwealth, Australia, who have, you know, have completely had this under control. And a big well done to her team, Jacinda Ardern, and, you know, her cabinet. But in terms of, you know, our cabinet, I always describe the Prime Minister as incompetent, and a few other light words as well. Well, I won't say them on live.
but I think it is clear and obvious, I think, and the more, you know, we need to get through this, and then we'll look at the lessons that we can learn from it.
Yeah.
That they were slow at every stage, slow into lockdown, so we know that made the first peak worse. They were slow to sort out the test and trace system. They still haven't. We spent 22 billion quid on this. So people are wandering around with the virus, and we're not telling them to self-isolate. They were slow to sort out PPE so that people in care homes were not being protected. People in frontline NHS not protected. They were slow there as well. Then we were slow on the second lockdown, so that meant that was worse. We were slow on the plans over Christmas. Everything's always just a day or two behind. And the ultimate one, which we're only seeing resolved, I think whether it's tomorrow morning or the day after, is, you know, we're not Australia and New Zealand, so sometimes it's hard to compare. However, the one thing we definitely are in the same as them is we are an island. And Australia, the 27th of March, said, right, nobody's coming in. You know, that's it. We're locking down. We'll have our citizens who are coming home can come home, but they've got to isolate on the other side, and we're going to check it out on, you know, pain of getting in trouble. And we haven't. Instead, Heathrow's been wide open, ports have been wide open, and it's only in a couple of days' time that we finally shutting down. And you just think, how many? You're not talking hundreds, you're not talking thousands, you're not talking tens of thousands, millions of journeys in that time of people coming and going. And the government say, oh, well, it wouldn't have made a difference. It's just wrong. Mm-hmm. And that people will look at that and say, how did that take 10 months to do? And it's because everything's been slow. But as I say, for now, let's all pull together. Let's see this off. Let's get back to normal. And then, then we can talk about what it means about competence, and then maybe what it means about the future.
I think what you said is completely, hitting the nail on the head. Delaying. Everything was delayed. And hopefully this is something that we can, learn from going forward. But for now, it's just abiding by the social distancing, abiding by the measures in place, because at the end of the day, it's not, these measures aren't one-sided. It's something which the Labour Party and all other parties agreed to because the national interest is in mind. It's not, putting personal differences or taking personal differences or personal feelings into consideration. It's putting the national interest in consideration, and that's what their aim was in terms of the Labour Party. But the Conservatives, they've spent 22 billion on track and trace. It's still not working adequately, in my opinion. They gave contracts out for PPE, nowhere to be seen. It's just, and also there was the chief advisor to the Prime Minister who went against his own rulings, his own measures in place, to travel to some place for an eye test or something like that. Absolutely bizarre that was.
They defended it. Boris Johnson defended it. Priti Patel defended it. Matt Hancock defended it. And then they stand up and say, "But you've got to abide by these rules. It's really important."
This is where people lose faith in MPs.
It might apply to some people and then not to others, and that's never going to work.
Yeah, it's not a good impression. When there's a phrase going on, one rule for them, another for us. It's completely, it's not very nice for, people who have to stay away from their family, who have to stay away from their parents because they might give them the virus. But, we hope that, maybe in a month or two, a couple of months, we're back to our normal lives again. Everyone has the vaccine, very, very slow process, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I just want to end with that. There's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. Other countries have done it, we can do it too.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, well, thank you for having me. And
thank you, Alex. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for answering those questions. And hopefully everyone who's listening, has learned from today's show. Thank you very much, Alex.
Well, all right, cheers. Have a good evening.
You too. Goodbye, Alex. Well, that was Alex Norris, MP for Nottingham North, who's doing a fantastic job. He's very active in Nottingham North, but across Nottingham as well. As you heard, he was a councillor as well before he stood as an MP. He is doing great work, and we hope that he carries on with this good work with his fellow colleagues, Nadia Whittam and Lillian Greenwood. But a massive thank you to him for giving us time and going through the vaccine, coronavirus, lockdown, and his role as a member of parliament. Next week, we have a very, very strong, passionate activist coming on the show. She has been a key person raising awareness about the injustice and atrocities committed by the Indian government in Kashmir, in Pakistan and India, mostly India, the atrocities committed there, who they have turned a blind eye to. But she has been very vocal, and she has set up a group, and she has been campaigning, and she's done very, very well. We will interview her next week and talk about her campaign. And a lot of Lords and MPs are supporting her, and we hope that she is able to carry on with the good work as well. But we will be interviewing her next week on Saturday, 5 to 6 p.m. That's next week, 5 to 6 p.m. So keep that date in your diaries. But till next time, it's goodbye from me, and take care of yourselves, and abide by social distancing, obviously. And hopefully, as we already mentioned, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and other countries have got the coronavirus in control, and it's our time next. Thank you. See you next week, 5 p.m.